Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the new year. I know that we all started school back today, not only Legacy, but most of the districts around us. So I know we were excited to get back to school and get our kids back. And thank you for bringing them back. I know some of you love your children so much you'd like to have another day with them, but thank you for letting us have them starting today. We had a great professional learning day yesterday with teachers in preparation for today and the rest of the school year. And so I think you'll find that we are eager to get your kids in our classrooms and keep on with the good learning going on there. I hope that you had an opportunity to listen to the podcast last week. We had Casey Hansen on, who is a top recruiter in the Dallas area, and she talked to us about new year, new beginnings, and maybe a new job for some of you parents. And we talked about those things that really need to be in place for you to be at the top of your game, because we have many job opportunities, and actually it's the opposite. We don't have many jobs. We're at the lowest we've ever been, and yet we do have those opportunities out there for strong candidates. And so Casey was able to talk to you all about how to become a stronger candidate by preparing your resume, by dressing the part, and some interview techniques. If you've not had the opportunity to listen to the podcast last week, just go to YouTube, Ask Dr. Be Good, and listen to that 30 minutes of really top-notch how to find a job in today's market information. So now let's turn it back to you and the kids. You've just spent 2 weeks at home with the kids, and I hope that you had somewhat of a rest between all the fun Christmas chaos. But some of you have feelings of relief that we started school today, and are felt maybe a little overwhelmed having them at home. And so let's talk a little bit. And to do that, I've brought on Christine Crockett-Smith, who is a returning podcaster with us. She is an relationship expert and author. And so, Christine, talk a little bit about yourself and your book and what you're bringing to us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here. My book is called 18 Master Values, Be the Parent You Wish You'd Had. And it is a call to action for parents who came into their parenting role perhaps without great role models and haven't known how to do the work to figure out how to do things differently. And quite often what happens in that case is they just fall back into the roles that they experienced growing up and just repeat the same things that they didn't like when they were growing up. So the book is to help people focus on really going deep and deciding what's important to them, because when you decide what your values are and you live them, decision making is so much easier, specifically decision making within parenting. So that's what the book's about.
And so today, you and I are going to chat about, now they've had their kids home for the last 2 weeks, and in some cases, parents had just a really good time with them. They met with family, they shared gift giving, but in some cases, we have parents who felt that maybe their relationship with their kids wasn't as strong as maybe they felt it should be, and were a little bit relieved about getting them back to school. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's. I think that those extended times together, whether it's the holidays or over summer, can be a real wake-up call for parents. That's one thing that's cool to be talking about this in the new year, because people's minds do flip and they get thinking about change
Yes.
and doing things
They're
differently.
more open this time of year to it, right?
Yeah, like they're looking for what have I been doing that I wish I could be doing differently. Yeah, they're open to those kinds of changes. And it can be a real eye-opener when a parent takes a moment to consider that they maybe were not looking forward to having their children home. It's one of the saddest things to me when I hear parents joking sometimes and sometimes not even, how they can't wait for it to be over and send their kids back. I think way more parents than would ever say that out loud actually feel that way. And I think and I hope that if you do feel that way, that it is a wake-up call to kind of think about, wait, what is that? What the heck is going on within this household that we're not enjoying each other's company enough that we look forward to having more of it? Because there are things people can do to repair bad habits that they've started in communication and in actions that they're taking to help there be more peace in the home. So if a parent is out there today and they felt that, like, oh my gosh, thank God it's time to go back to school, I would encourage them to pause and give some thought to why they feel that way.
So is it the child's fault that they feel that way?
You are stepping into dangerous territory.
I did that on purpose.
I know you did.
What causes a parent
That's
to-
interesting.
to possibly have those feelings?
It comes from disconnection in the relationship, obviously. And that can come from 1,000 different things. Unfortunately, it usually started really early in the adult-child relationship with the adult. Sorry, guys, but it's the truth. Not knowing how to build strong relationships. Maybe they came from an environment where the relationships were toxic, perhaps violent and chaotic. And when you come from that, you don't have the skill set to know how to do better and be better without really consciously investing time and energy in figuring that out. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to say 100%. I can't say 100% because what happens is when a parent doesn't have the skill set to build those consistent rules and ways of being within a home where the child knows what's expected and respects it, you develop these patterns, these weird back and forth patterns of the parent isn't laying the proper foundation, so the child then doesn't know how to respond and what's expected and who to be and how to be. And it creates just this circle and this cycle of chaos and dysfunction within the home. So then it can become part of the child's fault, so to speak. I don't think we really need to lay blame. We just need to acknowledge there's an issue and figure out how to fix it. But a child who hasn't been taught proper communication skills, and in fact, when there's not consistency from the parent, kids are smart. Kids are way smarter than we give them credit for. And they know if they can push 6 times and then get what they want, and they'll push 6 times. And the parent quite often doesn't see that's what's happening. So sure, then it's the kid's fault. But they don't have the skill set and the wherewithal to know that it's even a problem and how to fix it. So it does fall, even if the child is misbehaving, it falls to the parent to correct it and figure out what to do about it.
So I think what I heard you say is that a lot of this is triggered by the parenting that the parent themselves had growing up.
Sure.
Possibly childhood issues. You named some. How about the fact that they may come from a single home? Maybe they have problems with the children's father or mother? Are some of that a possible trigger for these?
Well, I hate to say ever that coming from a single parent home is necessarily a challenge, because I know some single parents who
we
are
all do.
rocking it.
Sure.
Yeah. But just having to do everything by yourself certainly creates a certain level of challenge that having 2 people parent
Can
that
make
doesn't
easier.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think what you're getting at is when two parents are not living together within the child's home, when they're separate, and one of the parents is so angry at the other one that they use the child as a pawn somewhat to navigate
Sure.
that. Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
and
yeah,
asking about?
we've done our board chair's he himself came from a single parent home, and he's written a book about it, and he came on and talked about that. But my wondering is that particular situation enough to cause a parent to disconnect with their children?
Oh, it's such a big question. In my opinion, anger doesn't serve. Ever. In my opinion, when you are finding yourself extremely angry ever, but certainly periodically throughout the day, there's some things you need to be dealing with. And of course it detrimentally affects the child when that kind of, when a child is expected to love both parents, and the adult has got to be the adult in the relationship and allow that. If for some reason an adult parent finds themselves in a situation where they are extremely angry at the other partner, whether that parent knows it or not, that child is feeling the effects of that. That child is having to be careful about what they say to each parent. One of the worst things I see is when a parent asks a child to lie to another parent about anything. Going back to the values, how on earth can you expect your child to value integrity when you yourself are asking the child to say things that are not true to another parent? It's a huge challenge to have animosity between two parents, and both of them have a responsibility to do anything and everything they can to get to a place. They don't have to be madly in love with each other, but being polite and kind, just those two words. If you decide to approach every interaction with that other person with politeness and kindness, it's really hard to be mean and ugly to someone who is only being polite and kind. Yeah, that's a huge challenge.
Okay, so now we have this parent who, due to whatever issue, whether growing up with poor parenting or abuse issues, is feeling alone. Maybe we have many immigrant parents who come and they've left their family behind, and so they're feeling alone and not part of. Maybe they don't even have the language yet, and so it leads to a lack of contentment with their current life. And so somehow, and don't let me put words in, but I'm feeling that when a parent gets off kilter, him or herself, it's hard to have a strong relationship with anyone, even your own children, when you're off kilter yourself. Is that?
It's impossible. It all starts with us and with our hearts and our minds and our ways of thinking. And unfortunately, most humans don't like to hear that because they want to blame somebody else. They want to blame some other circumstance. But how you feel about yourself, I consider that we have quadrants of mind, body, spirit, and heart. And when someone's life is not going well, one of those is out of balance. And what you just mentioned about being alone and loneliness and isolation is the great tragedy of our lifetime, of my lifetime, that so many people in this society of abundance, we've created this, we've taken the village away, we've created these four walls that we're each supposed to come home to and navigate well. I believe we came here for connection. I believe it's how we grow. I believe it's how we thrive. And when you have a parent who feels like they're parenting alone, they don't have a tribe, they don't have family, one of the very first things they have to do is try to find that group of people, even if it means creating it within their apartment complex, within their neighborhood, within their school, because they are not the only one. Guarantee it. And anytime you can have a group of people not sitting around complaining about what's going wrong, but encouraging each other and finding ways and things and books and videos and ways of thinking and being to make it better, it's got to start. It's got to start with the parents.
You know, you're reminding me when you said it takes a village to raise a child. I saw something recently that said if the village doesn't help raise the child will burn the village down for warmth.
Ooh. Wow.
And so that talked to me, because we're all about trauma-sensitive classrooms now, and trying to make sure that we understand that many of our kids come to school with the voids of something not being right with them, whether it's not having what they need socially and emotionally, and that we have got to remember we can't punish the trauma out of a kid.
Oh my goodness. What a saying. Can't punish the trauma out of a child.
Yeah. And yet some of our adults, that's their default. And so that's what we work with, to try to help our adults remember that the reason kids act out is not because they're out to get us. They're not wanting to step on our last nerve, which I've asked teachers not to bring to school. And and I just wrote an article, I think I shared with you earlier, that about every problem in public education has got to do with an adult. It's not the kids. We can always look at what's happening with the child, and within a short time figure out what the adult issues are that caused it.
Sure. Parents don't like to hear that.
But educators don't either, because it could be an ineffective teacher. It could be an ineffective campus administrator. It could be, it could be in some of our, in more extended cases, lobbyists of testing companies that want to continue using these, high-stake accountability tests. So there are a lot of adults in public education that could be pointed at as being part of the problem.
One thing I say loudly and often is there's no such thing as other people's children. It's a fundamental belief of mine that I love saying out loud and watching people's faces change, because as soon as you hear it, it's undeniable. We are all responsible for every one of them. None of us gets to say, write that child off because he's a bad student, write that child off because he's a troublemaker, write that child off because, name it, whatever you want to name it or label it. None of us gets to do that. And the moment at which we all embrace that and begin to start looking out for our children, meaning every one of them, we will have a shift in one generation away from so much depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, mental health issues, and drug and alcohol addiction.
Yep. If we can get our adults to start thinking, why is Johnny behaving that way?
Why?
And how can I help? How can I punish Johnny for behaving that way? If we can, why is Johnny, and what do we need to do? Yeah.
What's going on in Johnny's life?
Yes.
And how can I help? And if I can't help, who can I find, or what can I find that can?
Which is why you're here. I make it my job to try to bring support to our parents. And I certainly don't want our parents thinking that I'm here to say parents are to blame.
Nobody's really to blame. It's just we could all be doing better.
And, we have like I said, we have ineffective, sometimes teachers. We have ineffective campus administrators who need to embrace that new philosophy, and so it's not just a parent thing. It's anybody who's involved with children,
and we all are.
Yes,
we all are. You cannot have children, not be a teacher, not have any nieces or nephews. You've still got people that live next door to you. You've still got, when you see the woman in the grocery store mortally embarrassed because her child is throwing a fit, and you look her in the eye and you smile with compassion and empathy, because she's looking for judgment. And if you look at her and smile and let her know, hey, I've been there too.
Yeah, I do that. I say, hey, it's survivable. That's my line. It's survivable.
Oh, that's
I had
great.
2 boys and a girl, and I've been there, done that. Don't let it get to you.
Being there for each other. And just, yes, we all, if you are an adult on the planet today, you have a responsibility to the children on the planet today in whatever way you deem worthy of your time, of your money, of your energy, whether it's volunteering, to tutor, however you feel called. But thinking you can opt out of that responsibility is not.
It's a non-negotiable. Yeah, it's not an
It
option.
really is. And in one generation, we could shift things if everyone would embrace that.
Yeah. So let's get back to, in this case, our parents who have had their kids home for 2 weeks. They've sent them off to school. They're listening today and they're going, okay, I'm going to be a little honest with myself. I didn't have that ideal relationship feeling the last 2 weeks. What do they do?
It's a really good wake-up call. It's a really good wake-up call. First of all, just to admit that to yourself. And then the second step is admitting that you want it to be different. Our kids, back to that, they're so smart. They are so smart. And if they are struggling in relationship with you, they wish they weren't. So depending on the age appropriateness, and it's different if they're 4 years old or if they're 14 years old, the first step is acknowledging there's a challenge within the relationship. The second step is acknowledging your role in it. Quite often, I believe all those things I just listed about suicide ideation and mental health issues and drug and alcohol addiction and anxiety and depression, they all, in my opinion, come from an adult who was made to feel unlovable, unworthy, or not enough. And what happens when you grow up feeling one of those 3 things is that those are the thoughts that are swirling through your mind. Those are the thoughts that you're battling every day that make you feel less than and incompetent and unable to function. The first step in deciding that you want your relationships to be different is getting control of those thoughts in your mind. The first step is just awareness that they're even there. Just decide. You can decide for a week to just write down in a little book that you have with you every single time a negative thought comes into your head about yourself. That will blow your mind because most people don't know that's going on. The next step, once you recognize it's happening, is to begin to dismiss them as untrue and replace them with better thoughts about yourself. It's just like practicing a muscle. It's just like going to the gym. The more you do it, the more you notice them coming in and dismiss them and replace them with better thoughts, the better you start feeling about yourself. And that's the first step towards being able to have better, more positive relationships with anyone else and certainly your children. And what's really important, if you're going to make a huge shift and decide to make changes in your life and who you are and how you think, let your kids know it. Sit them down and tell them, hey, you know what? Talk about something specific that happened while they were home over break, about an argument that went on too long, or a slamming of a door, or an escalating of energy, or a loud voice. Talk to them about it. Tell them, you know what? We've got some bad habits going on here. I'm at fault. We're going to figure it out and we're going to clean it up. These are some things that I'm doing. And the kids will be so excited that you're wanting to make it different. And in fact, they need to be taking it on as well, identifying those thoughts and replacing them with better thoughts and getting in control of their emotions. There's mindfulness, there's meditation. I could go on and on and on and on and on. So I'll stop. But yeah, recognizing your thoughts is one of the best, easiest things you can do.
So one of the things that you when you and I talked about this podcast that you said was that a parent, in this case, it could be any adult in a relationship, but a parent can't really fix their kids' issues if they haven't started working on their own. Am I saying that right?
100%.
Okay.
Because the truth is, their kids don't have issues, even though, to backtrack, we talked about the loop of how they do start misbehaving and pushing limits when they realize that they can. 100%. No adult human can effectively manage and teach. That's one thing I love about my book. Even though it's 18 master values, be the parent you wish you'd had, I don't claim that those 18 have to be yours. I just claim that you need to decide what they are. Really concretely write them down. And you can do it as a family. I have a woman that bought one for herself, her husband. There's pages in there that you can take notes. Herself and her husband and her 5 children. It's a blended family. And they 1 week at a time, talked about each value, made their own notes, made their own impressions.
Did a book study.
Totally, within the family. And the 13-year-old was the most excited about it.
Wow.
Because it's empowering. Nobody wants to feel out of control. Nobody wants chaos. Nobody wants to be yelling at the people they love the most. Nobody. From age 3 to 103. If anyone's doing that, it's just because they don't have the skill set not to. So deciding what your values are as a family, and they can be different. That was one thing that was really cool about this family of 7. They weren't all the same. And acknowledging within their family that our values can be different automatically extrapolated to the rest of the world to realize just because that's important to that person doesn't mean it has to be important to me, but what is important to me? So yeah, doing it as a family and making sure that everybody's on board and is aware, and you hold each other accountable when you do it that way. A child, if you have said that you are committing to, let's say, not yelling as much, and you yell at them, they're able to go back to that conversation calmly, hopefully, and just say, hey, Mom, remember? Yeah.
So, as always in our podcast world, 5 minutes, if 30 minutes feels like 5 minutes, and we're towards the end, just because since we only have a couple of minutes left, what are 1 or 2 things that you want our parents to start with? What are or what do you want them to leave with the most today?
I'm going to assume you're talking about a parent who's struggling with their relationships with their children. I would hope that coming into this new year and this new infinite possibility of what life can be like, that they will decide, because it's just a decision, that they will decide they want it to be better from this point forward, and they will commit to, one thing in the back of my book, I have pages and pages and pages of books that impacted me. There is so much in the personal development field and in the parenting field, conscious parenting, Google it, there's so many Facebook groups and pages. There's so much that you can learn on your own about how to do better and be better, and that's the first step. And find a community. Find a community. You can't feel alone. You can't just be swimming with your own thoughts in your own head. Those 2 things, I guess.
Okay. Well, we thank you for coming on. We put the link to your book in the post, so if anybody's interested, they can certainly find it. And you and I have talked about possibly having future podcasts, and so we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.